welcome everybody to Planetary Gig Talk Live. I'm Jefferson Glassie, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gigs Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, but as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And I am here in Studio One of the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gigs Society, even though I wish I was at the end of the rainbow. But in some ways, we're going to be chasing that rainbow today with the conversation. The title of our topic is Nada Brahma, Music of the Spheres, and the Vibration of Intention. And I tell you, we couldn't have better musicians, really smart, brilliant, wonderful people who I've had the pleasure of talking with before to have this conversation with. So first, I'd like to introduce Michael, the cello player from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Michael, how are you doing? You got your Planetary Gig Society shaker egg. I see that. I know you like them because I've had to refill your supply a couple of times. How you doing in the pandemic? How's everything going?
Oh, we've got it made.
Okay. And you're there at the Frogville Studios with Big John, right?
Yes, and we just finished the construction of a 60-foot long greenhouse, which will be used to grow produce.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping to get out there someday and see what's going on. You can take us around.
To work.
Some Native American sites and stuff. Talk about some Indian music, maybe.
Oh, that only takes an afternoon. I've got a wheelbarrow and a shovel for you.
Okay. Anyway, for anybody who has not had the opportunity to listen to the Planetary Gig Talk podcast with Michael, number 55, whew, boy, that was something else. Really appreciate you taking the time to come over and be on this Zoom cast with us, Michael. Thank you.
Well, you started it.
I did. And also want to introduce the, I guess, former director of music at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London, amazing musician. I had heard about him because another friend, Alexander Savronsky, told me about him because he said, well, Bill Barclay knows all about music of the spheres. And sure enough, on his website, there's a hour-long video which he discusses, and then we had a podcast conversation about it, and I just found it so interesting. And Bill, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate your participating with this.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for all you're doing in this field, Jeff.
Sure. So if you don't mind, I don't know if anybody can see the book. It may, because of the screen, it may not work out. It doesn't work out, does it?
Not quite.
Nada Brahma. There we go, sort of. Nada Brahma, The World is Sound, which Michael referenced to me before in that podcast interview. And Bill, do you mind just sort of talking a little bit about that from, I don't know, the academic, historical, whatever perspective? What is the book about? Who wrote it? What you take from it? And, for somebody who hasn't really heard of the book or wants to learn more about it, what would you have to say about the book and the concept?
Nada Brahma, The Landscape of Consciousness, is an extremely special text. It was written by a jazz musician and presenter and seeker named Joachim Ernst Berendt. It was written in German in the early 80s. It was translated into English several years later. And it is really an ecstatic book. It's a spiritual book. It's a very personal book. I don't think he realized that it would have quite the traction that I think it has had in the world among people who really care. But it combines his life lived experience with various sciences, various types of music, in order to come up with a sort of series of revelations on what the universe is ultimately trying to do, which is seeking harmony.
Mm.
So it's on the fringes of music and science and spirituality. It's in the sort of invisible place that those three areas can mingle in experience. And in that experience, in that middle part of that triangle, is him. And he is almost in a rhapsodic, free-flowing state, walking us through his own spiritual journey of why music is the greatest metaphor for the union of the cosmos.
Ooh.
So it's very hard to explain, except that I have to just recommend that you pick it up, because it's not intimidating in the sense that he really doesn't allow himself ever to get bogged down in any one area. But it takes your breath away how he effortlessly skips from Zen koans to Indian Carnatic music to chemistry to quantum mechanics to cosmology to the uncertainty principle, all the way into mythologies of man, woman, and child, and the sensitivity of the ear versus the eye, and various mystics, and also major and minor philosophers, and everyone from musically from Ravi Shankar to John Coltrane, so that when he later in the book will mention Buddha and Einstein in the same sentence, it no longer takes your breath away, because he has made so many connections that you sort of expect that his mind is just going to continue along this path of revelation. I think it's an ecstatic book in the literal Greek sense of ecstasis, of outside the body experience, and yet at the same time it's very lived in and it's very him. So I know I'm being quite grand when I describe it, but it is my favorite book. It is the book that has spoken to me more than any piece of fiction. I value it in the same category as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I think it is a treasure map to revelation. And it is much of my life's work in the music of the spheres, trying to catch up to Berendt, to read some of the scientific papers that he admittedly does play very fast and loose with. And if there's a reason why the book hasn't come across as a new theory of relativity, it's because he extrapolates so loosely from scientific principles that one needs to go back and triple check the homework in many ways, just to make sure that what he's saying is as universal as it feels. And that's sort of my path in these few years, is to follow what how he's picked up this information, and to try to cross the T's and dot the I's, so that a real skeptic, a real cynic could be given their own tools to find out how exactly to believe in some of the things that he's saying.
Wow. So well said. I mean, you said it was kind of accessible or not intimidating, but a few of us, when Michael first mentioned it in the podcast, we thought, we got the book, started reading it, and said, holy smokes, this is really something else. So we even had a little book club for a while, a Zoom book club, while we discussed some of these topics that, it seems like an encyclopedia of music. And so Nada Brahma, the world is sound. I was in an Indian restaurant and I asked, what does Nada Brahma mean to you? The Indian people who were working there, they came back a little later and they said, we think it really means everything in the universe is created from sound. And I thought, wow, now there's a principle. Michael, what do you think? What do you think about Nada Brahma, the book, or the concept?
Okay, this is so great. Thank you. A long time ago, I had played somewhere in Taos, New Mexico, and someone was there, and he came up to me and he said, "You were playing," as encouraged me to come to you and talk to you about something, and I'm going to give you a book. My name is Kirk. And he introduced himself, and these people turn up in New Mexico. They are visionaries. You know, they come from science, philosophy, teaching various other places, but then they're just traveling and living here and continuing on their path. And he heard me play, and he said, after hearing you play, I want to give you this book. And it was the book that Bill just presented, Nada Brahma. And of course, I read it right away. Since that time, I've run across other things that I think you'll find interesting, Jeffersonian.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is an available lecture that you can see in an archive of the American Theosophical Society. And it is a lecture by the celebrated electrical engineer and acoustician and designer Rupert Neve, where he's discussing the dynamic range of human hearing, which goes up to a certain frequency. And then, as an addendum, he describes something that is above the range of human hearing in a very high frequency, that is a vibration that accompanies the live performance of a musical tone on an instrument or with the voice, and that this is the vibration of intention.
Mm-hmm.
Intention is part of a cycle, which I would call the circle of compassion. But Jeffersonian, the cycle of compassion, the circle of compassion, begins with acceptance. And it's at the top. And the acceptance of these things, and there is part of the realization of compassion. And as soon as you are in the acceptance of these things, you move directly to intention. The intention forms, for anyone who's in the realm of musical tones, forms around the creation of tones. And these tones that accompany this intention have another frequency of vibration that is literally emanating from a living human being as a vibration, and is able to traverse any distance such that the distance doesn't matter. And that the vibration of intention is felt in the receiver, who does not need to know that the intention was directed toward them. And that this vibration is received through the pineal gland of the receiver at a distance, and is then felt as a vibration and as an intention and as a feeling of well-being. And this is described as the vibration of intention. That is what shows the compassionate action, which was set in motion by acceptance leading to intention immediately. I intend for this. The statement that does something to put this into a human realm would be, I offer this vibration to all things. I offer this vibration to all things. And that intention causes everything that is saying, I am ready to receive the cosmic vibration of all things. Whoever is in that intention will automatically be in this vibration of intention. And then the act of receiving it and the act of feeling the well-being is what registers the compassionate act set in motion by acceptance. And this is what it's come to when you're saying, well, what do I do with it? You can't help but be in the intention once you have this acceptance. And in this time, the acceptance is a big pill to swallow.
Mm.
But so is the intention.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that very well because I just re-listened to our discussion when you said about you can say, I offer you the healing vibrations, for I am peace. And I've been sort of thinking about that quite a bit, but it also ties into something that Bill said in our prior conversation. At the end of the talk, Bill, you said one thing that I think would be good for musicians to do when they play music is to sort of lay the groundwork for the songs that they're going to sing, what they're going to put out there. And it seems to me that that's very similar to what you were saying.
Jeffersonian,
Yes.
here's some good news for you.
Yeah.
It's impossible for it not to happen. And that is another dimension of our discussion that I would like to offer you today. And that is something that refers to a physical vibration which is simultaneous throughout the entire living universe, which is everything, everywhere, matter, energy in all its forms, in every possible dimension, is all set in motion by a cosmic tone that is simultaneous throughout the universe and is, in fact, showing up for many people as the color blue. It is also known as the cryptochrome. It has been measured to have a frequency of 30,000 light years. That note is the tone from which all matter and energy emanate, and the absence of that tone is known as the ether. And the absence of that tone is the greatest potential energy that exists, infinite energy, and we witness it on our own plane in very tiny events which have now been measured by physicists. This tone exists as a fundamental from which every resonance and every interaction with every other vibration produces matter in all its forms. All of the things that matter does, all of the interactions of matter and energy, all of the astrophysics of the entire known universe, all of these things occur upon this one note.
Well, that sounds like I had mentioned I had the great fortune to go to India earlier this year and spend a month in India and Nepal and some time in Rishikesh, and I had an amazing time and learned some amazing things. But one of the things my friend Raj Saganaka there from the Devi Music Ashram talked about was Nad, this underlying vibration that is the reality of all things. And I think that people do talk about it. You know, some people may call it zero or the space or whatever, the infinite or God, or I don't know. But, you know, on one hand, it sounds kind of like, whoa, really? And on the other hand, it kind of ties in with, I think, maybe what's at the basis of the Nada Brahma book and his concept. Bill, what do you think about that?
Well,
Well,
just to go on, Michael.
I want to tie the music of the spheres with this picture of how vibration governs what we experience and makes everything from the interaction of vibration. And I mention especially other things that we are familiar with. And one of the first ones would be Qigong, the mention of Qi, the living Qi, which we conduct living Qi into the body using various principles of Qigong, which is also possible to be done remotely and without any connection whatsoever, that this practitioner can heal someone at a distance using this vibrational place, which means everything is really very, very, very deeply connected already and was made from resonance and the connection of vibration, which is simultaneous throughout the living universe. How can you go wrong?
Yeah, so Billy, Michael introduced the music of the spheres concept, and I don't know if you have some comments about anything we've been talking about it, or Michael's been talking about.
Well, I mean, Michael's going straight for the gold, which is just so beautiful and revelatory to hear. And I've got a bunch of questions about that too, and I'm just so grateful to be a listener as well as a speaker to all this. One of the things he said that I wanted to highlight just through the book, and it made me realize how many times I've read it with different implements. I keep going back to this book with different colored pens, it would seem, but
I do the same.
it's just one of those books for me. But in terms of what Michael was saying about the intention, that you don't need to know about it in order for it to work. Berendt quotes Leibniz, who's a German philosopher. It says, "Those who believe that nothing can happen in the soul of which the soul is not conscious are wrong. For this reason, the soul, although not realizing that it is involved in mathematical computation," and this is a bridge to Music of the Spheres, "still senses the effect of this unnoticeable forming of numbers, either as a resultant feeling of well-being in the case of harmonies, or as a discomfort in the case of disharmonies." Which is to say that music works on us. The ebb and flow of harmony and dissonance works on us spiritually, works on us mathematically, works on us cosmically, or what Michael was saying, works on us intentionally, whether we have any awareness that this is happening or not. And this is the larger premise that I'm trying to articulate in the world, which is that this ancient intuition of the music of the spheres actually does have physical, mathematical properties. And that one of the reasons and the mysteries why music makes us feel emotional experiences is because those universal qualities are working on us through music, whether we understand that they're universal properties or not. We don't have to understand, we don't have to develop an intellectual understanding of what's happening in order for music to do its work. And that's why music therapy works. And what I want to go back to at some point, maybe separately on this channel, is just to understand a little bit more about that vibration of intention that goes into the pineal gland that Michael was talking about, and the color blue, and that it's this overriding Om in the universe. That is new information to me, and I sort of want to bookmark that, and we can talk more about that either later or a different time. I know you guys mentioned that in your last thing you were talking about. Shall I talk a little bit about the music of the spheres now, Jeff?
Yeah, yes, please. I think that's great, because I found, what you were talking about, the Kepler and Tycho Brahe and sort of the context of that, just to be really interesting, and how the planet's orbits, reflect if you don't mind.
I'll do it as briefly as possible because I could talk about this all day. But essentially, for millennia, cultures all over the world had simultaneously developed an intuition, a belief, a mythology, different mythologies, that the planets were singing, that the heavens were perfect, and that these spheres that the planets were in, or just the orbital relationship of the planets, were musically perfect and were harmonic. Now that ended up codified in the Western world through Plato and then through Plotinus and the Neoplatonic scholars. And so we inherited this in the West from Plato and Aristotle, but it's in Far Eastern history, it's in South Asian history, it's in many African histories, it's in a lot of Native American history. So it's sort of a coincidence, a sort of shared intuition among human beings. And there are various different kinds of these mythologies that the planets are singing, which if you think about it is quite a strange phenomenon that you can pick this concept up in different areas. Fast forward all the way to Kepler, who's right around 1600, inherits a whole bunch of mathematical observations from his teacher, Tycho Brahe, Tycho was trying to correct the very iffy, squiffy numbers and measurements from the Ptolemaic astronomical system, with the Earth in the center and everything moving around the Earth in circles. And Ptolemy had created a lot of legerdemain and math to kind of make the numbers work. But fundamentally, Copernicus, who was pretty new, information was new at that time, many people felt like this was about to die. And this is before Galileo and everything, before they had telescopes, okay? Kepler is the one who famously figures out that the planetary orbits are ellipses, not circles. And just to get to the nub of it, this is a very dangerous idea, because the circle is perfect in the eyes of the church. And if you were suddenly telling everyone that it was the sun at the center of the solar system, so it's not only that humans aren't the center of the solar system, but it's the sun. And not only that, but there are all these different ellipses, which are not perfect. And the church would burn you alive. It's very dangerous. Kepler had to come up with some explanation of why the ellipse was more special and perfect than the circle. And he does a lot of smashing of numbers together that don't really work. But in his Harmonici Mundi 5, the 5 books of his harmonic world order, and granted, Ptolemy's famous book was also called Harmony. So again, this concurrent belief that planets are in harmony and that astronomy and astrology at this point are the same thing, and that all these astrologists thought that heavens were musical. So this was the same subject matter fused, okay, pre-specialist science. He figures out that if you create ratios of the slowest and fastest speeds on an ellipse, when a planet goes around the sun, it gets real fast. When it goes away from the sun, it gets real slow. The slowest and the fastest speeds of each planet, okay, through Saturn, which was the only planets they could see. They didn't get Uranus, Neptune, and Jupiter, and Pluto at that point. If you measured the slowest and fastest speeds and divided them by the slowest and fastest speeds of the contiguous planets, in other words, the planets that had the most effect on them, you got this preponderance of harmonic measurements, and that they weren't irrational ratios. They were C, E, G. They were the 3 tones in the harmonic series. 74 measurements, out of 74 measurements, 58 of them are harmonic. Now, this is not an observation that makes it into the central narrative of modern science. Because for that to happen, scientists, astronomers would have to come up with some explanation for the fact that there is an actual scientific basis for this millennial old intuition in the music of the spheres. So we have here a cul-de-sac scientifically that gets an appendage that gets left. And then science carries on through Kepler's other laws. Yes, the ellipse makes the cut. Yes, the orbital resonances make a cut. And it goes all the way through Newton and then to Einstein and then all the way through the Enlightenment, everything else that we know about science. But this Kepler observation, where he proves the divinity, the musical divinity of the ellipse, this doesn't make the cut. And what Berendt says in his book, Not a Brahma, well, he loops the Kepler observations into the book through a concept of entrainment, through a larger unified field philosophy, if you like, of the universe seeking harmonic relationships with itself over the axis of time. And just to get to the end of this point, if Berent were here, I would say, Berent, Joachim, if we could take a time traveling device and go ahead 5 billion years, would we still have 58 of 74 harmonic measurements, or would we have more or less? And he would say we would have more, because the universe is becoming more harmonic over time. Harmony is what the universe is trying to do. So there I've tried to say, start with mythology, get up to the real science of Kepler, the limitations of the scientific method in proving what Kepler said is actually true, and then going into the leap of faith that Berent makes in Nada Brahma in saying that we need to develop a larger understanding of what belief and intuition is in order to unify these fringes of science and music and meditation and spirituality into a larger understanding of what the universe is actually doing in the world. And so that, to me, is the music of the spheres. And what remains on the other side of that frontier is seeing all the other elements and moments in the world where the harmonic series preponderates, as it does in the Kepler measurements, in chemistry, in quantum mechanics, in Zipf's law, in behavioral science, in the stock market, in fractals, it's all over the place, like a universal constant that we do not give credence to. And it is because periodic events affect other periodic events, and over the axis of time, that periodicity finds alignment in the nodes of the harmonic series. The universe is seeking consonance, not dissonance. It's just beyond the realm of the scientific method for them to come out and evangelize this gospel to the world. It relies on musicians to do that work for science, to say this is a belief structure. It is also scientific. It is also something we know and resonate with us and know it to be true, to put it behind the intention of our instruments and to give that gospel to the world.
Wow. I love that example of the moons of Jupiter, is it? The three that have entrained together. Do you mind sharing that real quickly?
That's an example of orbital resonance in our solar system. The 3 moons of Jupiter, 1, 2, 4. They are locked in sync in a stable harmonic relationship. They are the key example we have in our solar system. Galileo discovered them, that orbital resonance exists, and that once planets find stable harmonic relationships to each other, they do not continue to move. They sit there in eternity until an asteroid comes in and knocks it off its axis, and the cycle continues.
Whew. Wow. Any thoughts, Michael?
Okay, Jeffersonian, can you hear me?
Yeah, look at the future
Wow.
man showed up.
So because of discussions such as this, we will definitely always get driven into the theoretical or the theory, the nature of things in discussion. And then finally you end up where you go, wow, that's cool. But is there a practical method? And one of the examples of a practical method would be something from Huna, which is Hawaiian medicine and philosophy, Huna. It's known as Ho'oponopono. And you mentioned this phrase from the meditation of Ho'oponopono, which is, for I am peace. That phrase names a harmonic place. The harmonic place is called peace, but it is a unifying feeling that is a vibration of emotion, and that in that statement, the offerer of Ho'oponopono is lifting up into the unnameable, unlimited universe as a human being on a planet, but he's vibrating with the entire cosmic vibration in his statement, "For I am peace."
Hmm.
And this is accompanied by a short series of breaths. In that act, this harmonic movement that is the natural tendency of all things is embodied in this act, and the person delivers not their wishes or their needs. They simply offer themselves to the living vibration. As they do that, everything that they are is completely within that vibration. And the stories of the way this meditation works in the real world are substantive and meaningful, because it's like real things that were difficult, and the difficulty is the vibration somehow knows all that resonance produces the harmony that we seek in everyday life. And this meditation is known as Ho'oponopono, and I recommend it because it is a practical way to allow all of these things that are really kind of in the realm of resonance, and the way the compassionate universe is seeking harmony.
Wow, it's so amazing and coincidental, because we just had one of these conversations a month ago with Roy about Ho'oponopono and music. Roy, I know you know Bill. Any thoughts you want to throw out there? You've only been here a minute, but from what Michael said.
Okay, hey everybody.
Hey, Roy.
Oh,
Oh, man.
No, it's just nice, where Bill was going, and then where Michael took it. It just reminds me of how we're balancing the inner and outer technologies. Like what I was going to say is like I'm trying to give an example of what I'm talking about. Like Ho'oponopono is kind of like this inner technology that's connecting the technology of ourself to the soul self, or something like that. And then the outer technologies strive to do the same thing. With the cell phones, they connect in our thoughts to, like I use the device to connect to you like that. But our inner technology, people know how to do it in that way, So only thing that it just made me think of was just inner and outer technology balancing each other somehow. There seems to be some kind of balance that we're applying.
And Bill, one thing we had talked about before, when I asked you, when you were talking about Music of the Spheres and Johannes Kepler and all that, and there were a lot of things we've gained from that scientific research, et cetera, but also some things that maybe we've lost from moving into the scientific era. And that was essentially kind of what I got from what Roy was saying. Is you were saying we've lost a lot of the you called it like the micro and macro view.
So my basis in all this, my first love is Shakespeare. Shakespeare is the secular Bible of our culture, our Western culture. And in Shakespeare, in the Elizabethan world picture, the man is a microcosm of the macro. It's a little bit, the short way of saying it is that it's not that you're a drop in the ocean, it's that you're the ocean in a drop. Okay, this is an idea that is familiar to certain people, that within the human body, we have God and we have the devil, and it's all in the mixture. And it was very specific in the Elizabethans, and they loved the whole premise of octaves being stacked on top of each other in the great chain of being. Okay, the monochord with all its harmonics was a literal physical idea for the Elizabethans, and that even like the first harmonic, second harmonic, third harmonic, they were like they were like, that's the lion and the tiger and the bear, and that's man, woman, and child, and that's king and queen and minister, and that's the oak and the elm and the fir, and that's the birds and the gold and the silver and the brass. Okay, they loved this hierarchy of tones that then through the various octaves made the whole great chain of being from the minerals all the way to the birds and the archangels and the Christian the Bible. Okay, so they thought this was a literal physical thing. And when we leave the Elizabethan integrated cosmology and migrate into the Enlightenment and into Newton, and then from there into the 20th century, what we have is a specialization of sciences and a fetishization of specialization, if I can say that, so that instead of horizontally connecting the different disciplines and saying, whoa, there's a there's a harmonic relationship between chemistry and physics and biology and statistical science and sociology and psychology. Instead, they go, no, we're going to burrow down and discover the protein reaction of this particular nucleus in this particular worm. And I'm going to get my name in a book doing that and studying that, getting my PhD doing that. And then I had this myopic focus on this one thing, and I lose the connection that this specialization has with the whole field. And what Berendt is really in Not a Brahma, what he's doing is something that I see as very Shakespearean, very Elizabethan. He's casting his net over everything. And the risk in that is you can't know everything about physics and cosmology and biology. You have to take these leaps of faith and try to draw connections between what you understand about this. And for the sciences and for people who study the sciences, that could be really heartbreaking, and that can be where they lose you, because one person cannot know everything. But when I think about the Elizabethan point of view, what I love is that you really have to follow your belief and your trust and understanding that these various fields can be combined without the niche specialization information that you would have to have in order to go to a conference on chemistry and explain harmonics to them. We need to be able to extrapolate and make these connections for the sake and the health of our entire body and our wellness and our understanding of the universe. And science has gone on to specialize so much that they are no longer the gatekeepers towards helping us understand what our universe is like, because they're so specialized in various areas, because of where academia has gone and where publishing has gone and where tenure has gone and where they have to publish and prove. Now, I probably just offended so many people in what I said. That's my belief, and that's my own point of view. But I think when you look at Berendt in this book, what he's demonstrating is what you can gain by risking and making connections in areas you might only half understand. Sorry.
Almost like a unified theory or something. Michael, yeah, Michael, do you have thoughts about that?
Jeffersonian, thank you for this discussion. This is just absolutely great. There's Roy L. right over there. And he's mentioned Ho'oponopono. Someone called me a horn player, and he said, Michael, what about intuition? And I went, yeah, in music, your intuition, when it happens, you're going to immediately rise to an action, which in your mind, you're saying, I have a feeling about this. This is going to be really good. But very seldom are you have an intuition would not describe something where you're going in music, I'm going to do something here. It's really going to mess them up. You're not really always saying that, but intuition and intention are like very deeply connected. because your intuition is like shaped by your kind of like your habits of intention, good intentions. But I'm really like going to mention maybe just one more thing that's kind of like in this direction, because you have a lot of discussions going on now, and I kind of feel like what Bill was saying about the Enlightenment, which is the 18th century, a bygone era where people, you know, rode in carriages drawn by horses, you know?
Makeup.
Yeah.
Makeup.
Wigs.
Wigs.
They had wigs, you know? Their music was very, very much designed along certain principles. But if you look at it, you go, it's very deterministic.
Mm.
In other words, everything is in this beautiful frozen planetary architecture harmony that is eternal. And later on, as Bill would point out, all of this evaporated in the other realms that human beings encountered, which were quantum realms. Nevertheless, in the quantum realm now, most of all, these things that Bill has mentioned that are really about the music of the spheres and what people felt was there. They knew it was there. But now it's being shown that even a planet, the Kepler spacecraft, right? Kepler became a spacecraft and it's listening. It has a microphone and it's able to pick up the tone produced by the planet Neptune. And that was their idea. However, determinism began to shape consciousness to the point that by the 1890s, a lot of people really believed that everything was set, steam power, generating electricity, all the things that human beings needed to know had been determined by science and were theoretically perfect. Then along came you know who. And we had quantum dynamics and electrodynamics, which show that the nature of things is so goddamn electrical that right back on vibration, because electromagnetic energy is vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of talk about the vibration of 5G. And does it affect human DNA? You better believe it. All these things are vibrating through human beings as if we were paper. The amount of space in a human being compared to the actual amount of matter is like shocking. You're more space than matter. So this situation is determinism in the year 2021 is at an all-time high, and everybody believes that technology is the answer. I give you Royale.
Well,
Future man.
If I just try to like bring a yin and a yang and a balance to where Bill took it and where Michael went with it, when he said we're more space than anything, right? To me, that brings it right back to intention. You know, we're sort of like an act of intention of some kind. And then Bill mentioned we're not just the drop in the ocean, but the ocean is in the drop, right? So, but now we have technology to help us visualize what that means. Because when you said that, Bill, I just thought of a hologram. If you take a hologram, a three-dimensional image, you got it in here, you can break it up, pick up any of the shattered pieces, look in there and see the rest of the picture.
Mm.
So sometimes technology helps us to like grasp the bigger picture in a sense, you know what I mean? Because like if I just say I'm the ocean, whole ocean is in the drop, that might be too philosophical for some people. But when you see a hologram, that's too philosophical too. But you're looking right at it, a flat surface with 3 dimensions. And so where Michael's going, like where we've got intention going on. Like maybe we're more intention than stuff, you know, because the closer we get down to it, it's not even like it's not even protons and nuclei. It's just vibrations at the end of the day. And the beginning was a vibration. And so intention seems like, wow, you know, and how we relate to each other intentionally, I think is maybe the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like we have a nightmare and we wake up and it wasn't even there, but we went through it, you know? So intention is, I think, part of the whole matrix that we're swimming in right now, you know? But I think our technology is like a mirror for us to better help us understand our inner technology. Well, what I think I'm saying.
I'd love to pick up on that and just to reply briefly, because I think that's the whole ball game, Roy. I'm a story person because I first came in theater and then into music.
Yes.
And in the dialogue between intuition, which has been raised by Michael, intention, which you guys both you talked about, and then into story, what is required is that we communicate this information through the lens of story to people, because technology has demonstrated that we could swim in a sea of data forever and lose the thread. Technology is so powerful that, you know, I don't know how many bytes are being created every second on the internet, but it's billions and billions and billions and billions, and it's metastasizing. Human beings are creatures of story. And, you know, next time someone calls you and just says, "How are you?" just notice how you will inevitably create a beginning and a middle and an end from what you say to them. What we have to do is to present this information as a story to people, which is the lingua franca of human experience, is narrative, because we are different than most other beings on the planet, and that we can conceptualize the past and we can conceptualize the future. And so we do naturally have this beginning, middle, and end awareness that we need to integrate in order to understand the beauty and the power of all these things that we're discussing today. So what I'm trying to do is to take not a Brahma, to take many of the things I've learned from you, Jeff, many of the things I've learned from Roy already, some of the things I've just started to learn from Michael, and from some of the other mystics, all the way from Sufism to Coltrane, and to try to understand how to turn it into a story so that I can bring this knowledge to people in the language that they need to understand it, which is not to say read these 10 books, people won't do it. It's not to say I'm going to play this concert for you and you're just going to magically get it. We need to braid music and science and story and narrative and revelation into performances, into presentations, into story, some medium for story, so that everyone can understand the immense beauty and majesty of this wisdom.
And of the planet and the cosmos and the trees and the plants and everything else. And Bill, I know you have a hard stop in a couple of minutes, but one thing I just wanted to ask you to comment on was entrainment, in terms of, can we entrain the human species and other planets to other people, other things to a more consonant, you know, more peaceful, however you would put it? I mean, is this the purpose of the story?
You're right. I think entrainment is happening whether we put intention behind it or not. To keep your listeners up to pace, 1666, Dutch scientist Christian Huygens determined that if you set pendular clocks at slightly different ticks and you leave them alone in a room, they will come into the same tick. And entrainment is what happens when we all sing happy birthday, and then over the course of the first 3 seconds, we start at different pitches, but then we all get on the same pitch. Entrainment is what happens when everyone on a disco floor starts dancing to the Bee Gees. Entrainment happens when people start clapping together. Entrainment is a universal phenomenon that is so integrated in our lives, we take it for granted. But entrainment is what Berendt says, and what I agree, is the reason why those moons of Jupiter fall into phase, and is the reason why the music of the spheres that Kepler discovered is there. I've had people talk to me about trying to create shows where we link up devices and we all sync our heartbeats. Okay. I've seen data that says that if you have open heart surgery with two people in a surgical room, that the hearts exposed will link up to each other. Okay. If you are in meditation and you om together and you entrain that om, you can hear the harmonics actually reinforce each other. This is powerful stuff, Jeff. The idea of entrainment is powerful stuff. I'm focused on trying to write and create a show that I can tour to orchestras where I can, or someone can, tell the story of this conversation and of Nada Brahma, and we have an orchestra behind us. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the wristbands and the heartbeat and the actual physical entrainment of breath and pulse and things, but I think metaphorically entrainment is getting on the same page. And because theater is my first love, what I know about live performance, and what Roy will know better than all of us about live performance, is that you can get a group of people to entrain to what you're playing and to the song that you're making. And when you entrain an audience, a live audience together, you can bring them into an experience of ecstasis, which is the place of revelation where things can happen to you and you can have total different divergent visions, experiences that can change the course of your life. This is what we've been missing in the pandemic, is the magic of live experience, is that thing that happens when we're on a room together. That's when entrainment is real. Our hearts are sharing the absolute space. And so entrainment is a very huge concept for me. I think entrainment is what the universe is doing. I think we have to basically let it do its magic by getting in a room together again.
That makes sense. And you know, we can entrain through music and a lot of other things. And I guess one of the efforts that we're trying to make here with our little Planetary Gig Society is maybe entraining through the information about how we can all kind of get on the same page, or sing or be in the same harmonious relationship to one another. And
can I echo something?
Yeah, go ahead, Roy.
I want to echo off of something with Bill before he leaves, because I believe that if I sort of bring it to a nice head of what he's talking about, I believe that when we talk about how everything goes together and the power of story, we actually living that story from sperm. Why were we the one sperm that got chose out of all them other ones, right? Joseph Campbell calls that story that we're living the hero's journey. You know, the ones that made it here have already been through an episode that we don't even hardly know about, but it's the hero's journey. And who understands that story, that can tell that story, connects with everybody, because we all understand that story. So I believe that in our society, the framework that we're looking for that echoes exactly what Bill is talking about is when they say these STEM programs, they're leaving out the arts. The STEM programs got to be STEAM programs.
Yes,
sciences, the technology, the engineering, the arts, and then the mathematics, right? Because it's the art. It's the very thing that's being shut down in the pandemic. It's what's going to save the pandemic. It's what's going to inspire people to the next thing. Okay. So now when I say the arts, right, the arts connects all of it. That's what I love about Shakespeare too, because Shakespeare is scientific at the same time. And I'm just going to give you a quick example. I'm going to read these lines. I'm going to say, what's the similarity between all of these lines? When your sweet issue, your sweet form should beat, who let so fair a house fall to decay, which husbandry in honor might uphold against the stormy gusts of winter's day and barren rage of death's eternal cold. Okay, so there's an artistic flow to that, right? There's an artistic flow to that, but man, Shakespeare is writing in all 10-syllable phrases right there. Okay, he's using that 10-syllable pent meter in there. So there's an equal balance of science and art going on here, right? And when you learn to do this, you actually learn how to cut your thoughts into a groove too. You know what I mean? I mean, Shakespeare, man, is like, whoa. You know, we're talking about really blending all of these, the sciences, the technology, the engineering, and the mathematics. What brings it together, Bill, what I think where it's not so, okay, we're focusing on the cell, is the artist who can see the big picture,
That's it.
paint the big picture,
That's
and
it.
get you to entrain with the big picture.
That's it.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say before Bill left.
And you're so right about that, and it chimes with what Michael was saying on your episode about compassion. Literally, what compassion is sympathetic resonance. My parting thought about this is the 10 syllables that feel right, Roy, and that have felt right to actors and people who read Shakespeare aloud for hundreds of years. The da-dump, which is an iamb, 1 foot of that 5 feet of poetry, is a heartbeat. How many heartbeats does the average person have per breath that they take? The answer is between 5 or 6. You can test it on yourself. If you just take your pulse, you close your eyes and you watch your breathing, you count how many pulses per breath. It's either 5 or 6. If you breathe at the end of a line of Shakespeare, that's 6 heartbeats per breath. If you don't breathe, it's 5. The iambic pentameter of Shakespeare is the natural, scientific, human entrainment between the 2 greatest musical rhythms you have in your life, the relationship between your heart and your breath. That's why it's natural, and that's the steam right there, Roy. That's where the arts and the science and the mathematics just start to become the song of ourselves. To me, that is infinitely beautiful, and that's intuition and intention and all of it. And I'm so regretful that I need to leave. I just want to thank you all so much for having and hosting this platform, and just all what all 3 of you contributed. And I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Bill. We got to continue. We'll continue because I want to talk to you about this book.
The Shakespeare Code.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole.
yeah, man. Let's do it. Let's dance.
Okay.
All right.
Love you guys.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Be in touch. And if anybody who's in the audience wants to come on screen and ask any questions or whatever, we can continue the conversation for a little while. This is so fabulous. Roy, thank you very much for joining. There's Linda. Hey, Michael. There's Billy. What you gonna do with that, Michael?
I hear guitar and cello.
Planetary Gig Society shaker egg, Roy. Michael earlier.
Okay.
So any questions, comments, or anybody want to have anything they want to say?
Hey, hey, Jefferson, there's one thing that I wanted to say. I just know that I went through what I said so fast, but when I said the 10 syllables, 10 syllable that everybody knows is to be or not to be. That is no, that's not no one. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. That's a 10 syllable phrase. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Yeah,
Nice.
And so everything I read was 10 syllables, just like that. And
Yeah.
Shakespeare flows like that a lot. So I just wanted to put that out. It's like another type of haiku time signature.
Yeah. Michael, you got anything else you want to add? We're just sort of free form here right now.
Oh no, we're really on the subject today, Jeffersonian,
Jefferson.
the universal nature of all things in tone. In the beginning, there was groove, and the groove was great. If you take the heartbeat, it's a note that's named in beats per minute. As you go higher in beats per minute, it becomes a visible tone. A thump, thump, thump becomes a rich bass note. And that goes on up through all the timbres to the highest notes a person can experience. And then another realm of vibration that we receive as
Light.
What is called a spiritual complex vibration, which is emanating out of the crown chakra of the player as a high frequency vibration, which covers any distance and is received by the receiver in their pineal gland through the bones in their head.
Yep. That's
Spiritual
my
technology.
We
great
are
intention.
human beings connected to all things infinitely.
Right, that underlying vibration, that pitch, that frequency that we all relate to is consciousness for us. Like the way we resonate with that creates our consciousness, right? And everything is resonant. Everything is resonant. And our biological relationship with that frequency that we can't hear is what causes consciousness. And that was a thought I had when I listened to your podcast and I read Nada Brahma. And it hit me as like, I'm like, people talk about, reincarnation, and we think about it like we're going to come back as a thing. It's like, not already are that. We are all the thing, because that, if you want to think about it like it's Wi-Fi signal, that vibration is like the Wi-Fi signal. We're all devices that pick up that resonance, and that's what creates a spirit, is that relationship between that vibration and our resonance, like our biological ability to resonate. That was what I got the most from your podcast and that book, and it just is awesome, man. It made everything better. Everything I did was better after that hit me.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, this conversation is so amazing. Everybody has just a different octave that they're, offering for all of us. And my work is to bring all of this information into the practical, like you were saying, Michael. And one of the things that I think is so beautiful, and you just touched on it, Billy, is the biological aspect, because our bodies are everything we're talking about. We have every single thing that we've all talked about inside of us right now. And it is the understanding of that and the knowing that we have that, and activating that so that we become, our physical bodies become the music. That's how we entrain each other. That's how music, this beautiful nous, this spirit, is entraining us to it. And our work is then to become it in physicality, so that we are the gold light that is this spirit. That's how we transform this planet and each other. And so, at least that's in my world. I'm saying it like that's the truth, but that's my truth. And so then the question becomes, how do we share this and teach our students, our children, this information? And so that's one of the things that you said, Michael, about acceptance. I'd like to go back to that, because acceptance is the first understanding. When we have knowing, true knowing, acceptance is our work. Meaning our work is to learn how to be in this acceptance. And the Ho'oponopono is a way in which that we can access because it is saying that we are all that is and we accept all that is.
I want to mention this in a different context. When we've done some of these concerts for democracy, and we have one coming up for Georgia, by the way. And I had some of the musicians from India that I met, Raz Saganaka, and we were talking about, and actually Roy Joseph says this, and I've been quoting him like crazy: democracy needs music, and music needs democracy. And if you think about it, I think that's really true. But what Raj said is, democracy, because he's in India and they're democratic theoretically, but they're having issues as well. But he said, democracy means everybody is equal. And he said, I think that should apply to animals too. So, now we're trying to take this spirit, this intention, and recognize the similarities, that we're the same. We're all the same drops of the ocean together.
Yeah.
Well-
I was gonna say, even if it's different for a reason. It's the same reason the French horn is different than the trumpet. It's all to make music, together.
Yeah.
We're all part of the symphony,
Right, to define one another, because it's like I am because you are. That without someone to contrast, you can't exist as a separate
contrast
self.
and complement.
Exactly.
The piccolo
Yeah.
complements the tuba,
Right.
and that complements the trombone, the differences, they complement each other. So it's like, that's why I keep saying that it takes an artist, not just a politician, not just a scientist, but an artist to see what all the paints are for, what all the different colors are for, because politicians, they're going to fight over the different colors. You see what I mean? Oh, you're a different color, we got to fight. You know what I mean? It's like, man, you're going to kick the French horn out of the symphony because it don't look like you.
Right.
Well, every nature, every molded form, every creature exists in and with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We start to see ourselves as separate. And yes, we are in this physical body, but we're really not. We really are that infinite, eternal one. And when Michael was talking about the pineal gland, I really love that, because that is telling us right there that everything that we need to be this divine essence, this heaven on earth, this angelic, whatever you want to call it, spirit, is available to us in our bodies to access.
If we accept it.
That's right. If we accept it. So the work then becomes the acceptance.
Wow, interesting. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Jeffersonian. We've really come all the way around into our entrainment and our session today, very entraining. But I want to remind you that in more recent times, we've become acquainted with something else that goes along with entrainment. It's called entanglement.
Mm.
I give you Royale.
Wow. He just dropped it off to me, man. But yeah, the thought that I just kept seeing was, I saw this Broadway play called War Horse. And all it was, man, they just had like a sticks and stones horse, man. A couple people holding the sticks to be the fence. And it's like, there's nothing there. I'm like, how are we going to, I'm going to sit here and watch this show? I mean, like, what's going on? And then after a while, entrainment, man, you just sank right into the story. It was so powerful. You didn't even see the people moving the horses anymore. And there's that entrainment and entanglement thing. It's like, whoa. And that War Horse is better than the Stephen King movie War Horse. Multi-million-dollar film with all of it filled in. The little Broadway play with the sticks and stones is way better. So there goes the power of that entanglement, entrainment, intention pouring through. Sometimes intention pours through when you leave more room to let the people you're entangling with, the people's creativity, filling it in, rather than the director's set filling everything in. You know what I mean? So that's the only way I can kind of tie together where Michael was going with that. You know what I mean? Like what is that? I think Aristotle said what an artist is trying to gain aesthetic arrest with the audience. See what I'm saying? That's why Shakespeare, they're writing in rhythm. You don't know the rhythm is there. You just reading it, you know, but they're using rhythm the whole time. Dr. Seuss uses the 8 rhythm all the time. You know what I mean? I will not eat green eggs and ham. I will not eat them, Sam I am. I will not eat them with a box. I will not eat them with a fox, right? He keep talking like that, and he's in training with you. He got you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Through the rhythm. So I just see all of that when Michael's talking about entanglement. I wasn't expecting that. But it's like, you know, your idea can become contagious, you know, where Aristotle says the artist wants to get aesthetic arrest with the audience. And that's what that play Warhorse did with those sticks on stage. Even better than the movie. I saw them both.
Jefferson.
Yes.
Jefferson.
Yes,
Can
Michael.
you hear me?
Yes.
Now, in this thing that it has a funny kind of name, entanglement. But we hearken back to this idea that there is one vibration. And this has been known by the ancients. It is also Rastafarian. I and I are one.
Nice.
All of these things are already present and very visible in all spirituality and in all the things which are the convivial, like social nature of human beings, where we get together, we get down. And this name of something which was, it was dropped by a physicist, and they said entanglement. And really, if you look at something that's entrainment, that encompasses something else called entanglement. The entanglement is also part of this cosmic resonance and interaction, the reflection. Remember, there's reflection, Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
There's entrainment, there's entanglement, there's resonance. And there is a description of these things, but it is in our living being dimension. And that's the rest of it will always be a mystery, always. And without the mystery, we would be in a total and endless deterministic world. And that's called, I think that's called socialism.
Well, you know, this has been a great conversation, and I think we're going to just terminate the end of Facebook Live and whatever in a minute. But I would like to ask Michael, we're coming upon the solstice, and you told me one time about what the horses do at a certain time, and I don't remember exactly, but it's one of the risings of the moon, one of the, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind just mentioning
Yes,
that? And
this is great. Jefferson, this is absolutely great, because at this very moment, I have no idea what we might have been saying at that moment. But I did want to tell you about Jupiter and Saturn, and we started with the music of the spheres. Jupiter and Saturn are now visibly near each other, but they are millions of miles apart, many millions of miles apart, but it looks every night like they're coming together. And that this happens once every 800 years that they line up the way you are seeing it tonight. And it's with the first quarter of the moon. The way the planets behave in this 800-year cycle produces a moment in which Jupiter and Saturn shine together toward the Earth. And some people say that this is possibly how the story of the Christmas star occurred, that a bright star was seen, and that this was two planets shining as one light for one night. But the idea that we have this enormous place that once we know it, this vibration, once we know it, we really would not be able to leave it. Our knowledge of it is present. And in that knowledge of it, we are united in vibration, in tone, and in groove. I salute you all. Much love.
Much love.
Safe travels,
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Namaste.
fellow travelers.
Thank you so much, Billy, Linda, Roy, for
Yes.
signing on. Michael, so great to see you. Thank you for participating. And
Thank you for doing this, Jefferson. This is awesome.
sure thing.
So much.
Yep, and thank you for